Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from the Target Center here in Minneapolis. It's 1:41 a.m. local time, which means it's 11:41 a.m. or p.m. rather, Pacific. So this is a real late night gang stream tonight. But the Lakers lost 116-104 to fall down 2-1 in the series. There was a lot to digest with this one. Luka ended up being sick. We had no idea. We didn't see him at shoot around, so that probably should have been a warning sign there, although sometimes they clear out before we get there. You know, players will clear out, but didn't see him at shoot around, and then we find out in the first quarter he's dealing with the stomach bug, as ESPN's Lisa Salters reports in the first quarter on the broadcast. So that was news to all of us on Media Row. No one knew that, and that obviously changed the complexion of the game. LeBron finally breaks out and looks more like himself and has 38 points and is hitting everything and looks like the pre-injury version for, just for basically the entire game, is doing everything on both sides of the ball. JJ afterwards said that he felt like it took a couple weeks for LeBron to get his legs back and to get his energy back, and that tonight he looked much more like himself compared to the first couple games. Then the Lakers are tied 103-103 with 4:37 left, and Minnesota closes on a 13-1 run to take game 3, take command of this series, and Minnesota has now won 8 of the 12 quarters. So I will be expressing some optimism with my Buha's big picture and why I don't think this series is over. However, up to this point in the series, the Wolves have been decidedly the better team. It has been close, and I think it's closer than the 8-4 margin in the quarters suggests, but the Wolves have been better. They have been the better team through the first 3 games, and the Lakers are going to have to make some serious adjustments moving forward, which I will be touching on in my big picture. But before we get into it, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to everybody in the late night, everybody in the chat, everybody in the late night gig. My brain's all over the place right now. It's been a long night. It's almost 2 a.m. But I also forgot my mic stand. So just like the Lakers, I was unprepared tonight. So I got to hold this for the next hour plus. So Buha's big picture is going to be, I don't think this series is over. However, I think the Lakers are going to have to make some serious changes, and some serious changes starting in game 4. And I think the first one has to be changing the starting lineup. Jackson Hayes has become unplayable. He somehow topped the game 2 disaster performance with an even worse performance in game 3. At least that one, he was fouling and kind of like doing stuff. Like this one, he was largely just out there. And I think the biggest thing with him has just been the decision making and the processing hasn't quite been up to the level that the Lakers have needed it to be. I think you've seen it more so actually on the defensive end, although I think he's had some good stretches in the series overall, but like they've neutralized him offensively. I think there are some things that the Lakers could do a little bit more creatively to try and attack the way that they've just switched everything with Jackson. And I mean, even tonight they were in more of hedging and blitzing, and the Lakers still weren't able to get Jackson the easy finishes that he typically gets when teams guard them like that. So I just think at this point, like we've seen 3 games of it. He has not cracked double digits, either due to foul trouble or due to his defense or just not being a threat offensively or some combination of all of that. JJ clearly does not trust him beyond that 8 or 9 minutes that he's played in all 3 games. And you should not be starting a guy for 8 to 9 minutes. Like that is just, there's the placeholder starter and some teams have them, but that guy has to be closer, as I've said before, to like 15, 18 minutes. And I think if Jackson's going to play this little, he should be coming off the bench and either playing that amount of time with second unit groups or just benched entirely. And at that point, LA's going completely centerless, which they've basically been doing for the entire series. I mean, they've played centerless basketball for 39 or 40 minutes in all 3 games. And I think that's partly why they're down 2-1, but they don't really have any other options. It's not Alex Len. This is where I think it would be nice to have a Trey Jemison or Christian Koloko. I'm not saying they're the answer, but I would at least, like, you could at least throw it out for a shift and see, because really what I think tonight kind of showed was like Vando and Goodwin both played a little bit more. They both had more of an impact on the game. And I think the Lakers leaning into the Banshees and the energy and some of their effort plays and just the intensity that those guys play with, and those guys getting offensive rebounds or making the extra pass or switching defensively and pressuring. And I thought Vando was, he got 5 fouls, partly because of the chaos that he was causing on the defensive side. But I think in a way, like those were, you kind of live with that based on the turnovers that he forced and just the disruption and making Minnesota feel him and pushing the ball out and making them reset and making them go deep into the shot clock. Like I thought Vando played into all that. Obviously, in the offensive end, he continues to struggle in terms of catching and finishing, and he has been a minus on that end in the aggregate. But I think right now, like the Lakers are trying to piece together a coherent rotation, and it's been tough because they have not been getting much. I think if we're looking at the margins here, like they have not gotten, I think, what they have needed from Rui, Gabe, and DFS. I think with the latter two, it's more so been on the offensive end. With Rui tonight, there was a couple fouls late, some turnovers, some missed open looks. I thought he had a pretty rough fourth quarter. If you look at now, dating back to the Denver game or the Denver series, he's had a rough stretch here in the playoffs, going on the last like 7-8 games. I want to give him a little bit of grace just because of the face situation and wearing the mask. And, that can sometimes throw guys off a little bit. But I thought he was costly tonight and just hasn't really been, like we talked about some of the X factors and guys winning certain battles. And like I thought Rui versus Jaden McDaniels was going to be an X factor battle within this series. And Jaden McDaniels has decisively outplayed him. Like it's not been close in any of the games. Like Jaden McDaniels has been by far better than Rui in all 3 games. And I think he had 30 points tonight. Like that's a problem for the Lakers. I do want to give Minnesota credit because I think they've done a really good job of running some of the Lakers shooters off of the 3-point line. And none of them, with the exception of DFS, have quick releases. Like Gabe sometimes will do the no dip 3 depending on the pass, but like I think they've just done a good job, more so with Rui, but to a lesser extent, DFS and Gabe running those guys off the 3-point line. And then with the way that the Lakers are trying to have their shot profile, it's not like those guys are necessarily going to take a dribble in and hit a pull-up shot. Like maybe Gabe or Rui will do that. They haven't really done that much in this series yet. So I think that's, like right now, the Lakers are just kind of running on fumes offensively in terms of shot generation and the way the offense is functioning. So I think it has to start with taking Jackson out. I would start DFS. I understand that there could be an argument for Vando as well. And him just starting out on Ant to start games and just trying to cause some chaos from the jump. And if he gets into foul trouble, then you go to DFS and you downsize a bit. I think with the offensive end, I do have some concerns. And I think in a way, when Vando's out there, the best way to use him offensively is to involve him more. And I just wonder if with Luka, Austin, and LeBron out there, I don't know if you want to put a guy out there that you almost have to involve to make effective offensively, especially with, I don't think Luka and Vando have quite cultivated the two-man game that would be required to make that work, because we know Luka, assuming he gets healthy and is fine for game 4, there's going to be a certain amount of just Luka having the ball, especially in the first quarter, running the offense through him. And if Vando is the primary pick and roll partner, I have some concerns with that. It doesn't mean he can't do it with Luka. Doesn't mean they can't work on it. But like, I don't think game 4, which is essentially going to be a must win for the Lakers. Like, you don't want to go down 3-1. Sure, they can go down 3-1. They still have 2 more games in LA. They just have to win game 5 and then win game 6 and then win game 7, right? But I don't think with the way this series has gone, I think if the Lakers fall down 3-1, they're probably losing in 5 or 6. I think this group would show enough spirit and fight to not roll over in a game 5, but then they probably come back to game 6 for their funeral. Like, I don't think they've shown a level of consistency yet in this series to warrant the belief that they're going to win 3 straight, including a big one in game 6 on the road. So I think they have to do everything they can to avoid going down 3-1. I think they need to tie this 2-2. I did say, coming off of game 2, going into this stretch here in Minnesota, that I thought it was probably going to be a 2-2 series. So if they won on game 4, it's 2-2. It's a best of 3. 2 of those games are in LA. I think that swings it back in LA's favor, stealing back home court. But to get there, I think the biggest thing, not the biggest thing, the first thing has to be removing Jackson from the starting lineup, potentially from the rotation, but that I would maybe give him a shift, in a second unit shift, see how that goes. If it doesn't go well, then I think you have to move on. The issue then is just like, you are playing centerless and you just don't have that many bodies. And I think that was one of the big things that tonight kind of showed, that with Jackson continuing to struggle, I think Rui struggling a bit. The other guys just not really, obviously LeBron and Austin had big nights, or Austin had a relatively big night compared to his first couple games, but has been struggling inside the arc, or was struggling inside the arc today. Luka was hampered with his sickness. Like, they just didn't have guys who could create their own shots and create advantages. And I think that was a big problem for them with tonight's game. And then second thing for me would be, I think they have to be careful with how they guard Ant. And I'm going to touch on that in a little bit. But I thought Ant was masterful tonight in terms of his decision-making and his playmaking and the way that he and the Wolves countered the Lakers scheme. And I thought there were smart little subtleties of guys rescreening, the spacing. They were shifting guys over, so they would shift a guy to be that reversal pass and just like make an easy pass to reset the offense. But they also were flashing guys into the middle of the Lakers like pseudo zone. And I think there was the one play where Nickeil Alexander-Walker flashes toward the free throw line. Julius Randle flashes along the baseline. That's on Luka to front that and Gabe to sandwich that, and them to not let Julius get that. Julius gets it. He gets a layup. And, it was just little stuff like that. I thought Ant, also Jaden McDaniels did a brilliant job of attacking the Lakers closeouts and using them shifting over against them. And he found the crevices in their defense. And because of his size, his length, his athleticism, he was able to slither past guys and get to the rim. And once there, as he said to Scott Van Pelt after the game, the Lakers have no rim protection and no shot blockers. And that's been a theme now through the first 3 games, but especially tonight. I think the Lakers really, like, their lack of size, I thought, really caught up to them tonight. And there's no way to change that. Like, unless Jackson Hayes plays his best game of the series in game 4 and they give him one more shot, it's certainly possible. I'm not saying it can't happen, but based on what we've seen through the first 3 games, JJ has had a very low level of trust with him. He also said tonight that they still believe in Jackson, which if you've been following some of JJ's comments throughout the season, when he says he believes in someone, is actually kind of been a bad thing. Going back to like JHS, they said they believed in him, and then he didn't play and then got traded. I believe Dalton was another one that he said they still believe in, and like he's been buried within the rotation. So it seems like Jackson's now entering that, because JJ was asked about benching Jackson after the game, and he said they're going to evaluate everything, and so we'll see. But I think they got to be careful with the overhelping on Ant. And this has been something that I've been talking about for months now. But I think the Lakers, because of the lack of rim protection, they get forced into some of these tough decisions in terms of overhelping and trying to protect the rim versus trying to guard the 3-point line. And I'm not saying it's an easy decision. I understand that, of course, from like a points per possession perspective, an open or like semi-open layup is going to be a higher percentage shot than even an open three. But I think the Lakers got out of balance with that, and the Wolves were able to get them in the blender. The Lakers were one step behind. Then there was far too many possessions where it was like four guys. Like if you go back and I rewatched kind of the general recap of the baskets from the game, but I stopped it a couple times, and you're just like looking at some of these plays, and there's like four Lakers in the paint and one guy at the top of the arc. And that guy's supposed to somehow cover all the ground to the three Wolves shooters that are spaced out on the weak side. And it's like, that guy can't do that. Like, this team is not really built to rotate and scramble like that and cover that much ground. Like, they just don't have the athletes. They don't have the speed to do it. That's why they're far more of a containment defense. And tonight they really struggled to contain the ball, and that was its own kind of thing with, I thought Minnesota was able to just get downhill, generate a lot of advantages. So the Lakers got to be better at point of attack. They got to be better with the closeouts. The closeouts were a bit wild tonight, and they allowed too many guys to get baseline or get to the middle. And it was just, from an execution perspective, a subpar performance, in my opinion, defensively. There were some good stretches, some good moments for sure. And the Lakers had a lead. Like, the crazy thing is, Lakers had a lead at halftime. They were tied despite, I haven't even touched on like the turnovers were disaster tonight. The free throws, the offensive rebounds allowed. There was a lot of things. And then you factor in Luka. It's like they had all these things go against them, plenty of which were self-inflicted wounds. But despite that, they still were in this game. And that's my biggest cause for optimism, is like, if Luka can get right by game 4, which it is a quick turnaround, it's under 40 hours. If they can clean up the turnovers, which they were much better with in the first couple games, I had said in my series preview, I figured one of their losses would look something like this, where they have like 17, 18, 20 turnovers. They've had a couple 20 turnover games against the Wolves. They had 19 tonight, so they got pretty close to that. I was expecting one game like this. I didn't obviously know the context with Luka and everything, but I think if they can clean that up and be more intentional with running the offense, like they have these great stretches offensively in terms of attacking from the weak side, and there was various DHO actions and pin downs and just the various cutting things that they've been doing that have been working, and then they just stop running it. They start ISO hunting and mismatch hunting, and like, I think that's kind of been one of the things that has undone them at parts. They had some success with pick and pops, though. Rui missed a couple. There was also some turnovers with those. And again, Luka was uncharacteristic. Like, Rudy poking the ball loose against Luka, that never happens. And that, to me, was a clear, like, if you want to play that summed up the game, it was Luka ISOing Rudy. He goes to the step back. Rudy pokes it loose. Jaden McDaniels gets it, gets out in transition. Luka fouls him. It's an and one. And like, that 6-point swing was a big play in the game, but also that just kind of showed you like where just Luka didn't have it tonight fully. Still almost out of triple double, which like I still he hit some tough shots. He still was competing defensively in the glass. What was getting blown by, and like what was I think a big target for Minnesota. But I'm going to touch on Luka in a little bit. But like, I think the big things for LA, just because I know I'm going all over the place right now. Luka obviously has to be healthy. If Luka's not healthy in game 4, I don't think they're going to win that game. I think LeBron took some big steps, and that's something I'm going to touch on in a second that I think is positive. I think they need to get to the rim more, put more paint pressure on the Wolves defense. Like, they've just been bailing them out with jump shot after jump shot, and they shot the ball well tonight. They got a lot of good looks, but they need to put some more pressure on the rim. I think that's been a big thing. Double Ant and blitz him less. It worked for certain possessions, but I think he has started to figure it out. He has started to, and Minnesota has countered with putting guys in certain spots. And I think the Lakers have to play it more straight up like they did in the first couple games. I think they just got to play harder. Like, as Dorian said after the game, they just didn't play hard enough for long enough tonight. And that is something that they did in game 2. They didn't do in game 1. I don't know why they've been like an every other game team in this series so far, but like game 4 is their game 7 or game, 6.9. Like, they have to approach it like that. And if they don't come out with the requisite level of energy and effort and focus and crisp closeouts and rotations and box outs and not making mistakes like guys passing to other guys and not catching the ball or dribbling it off their feet or just slipping or whatever. Like, there's just a lot of things that were self-inflicted, unforced errors that far too many tonight. Notable performers. I mean, it's a short list. I do want to start, of course, with LeBron, 38 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, only 1 turnover, despite LA having 19. Like, typically LeBron would be a guy who would have a higher turnover total. 13 of 21, 6 of 9, 5 of 9. My contacts are been bugging me lately, so I can barely see right now. But LeBron, I mean, he had the stretch where he blocks Ant, he hits a pull-up 3 in transition. He also had the stretch in the fourth quarter, hit 3 straight threes as the game is teetering. Minnesota looks like they're about to run away with it. LeBron stabilizes things with the 3-point shooting. And tonight he was awesome from that end. I thought he had more burst, and I'm going to touch on him. One of my takeaways, Luka, 17, 7, and 8, 5 turnovers, 6 of 16 shooting, 2 of 8 on threes, did not have his step back tonight, didn't have his jumper tonight. Did hit like the 2 threes he made were incredible. One was on the left wing. I think they both might have been on the left wing on each side of the floor. He had the one before halftime, and then he had one, I forget if it was the third or fourth quarter, but a couple of incredible threes. But outside of that, he just did not look like himself. And you could tell the body language, him sitting on the bench with his hood on, like he just did not look right. Didn't start the second half, and the Lakers weren't sure if he was going to come out for the second half, and then he ended up coming out. Austin, 20 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Finally started hitting the threes that he wasn't hitting, 5 for 11 on threes, but just 7 for 18 overall, which means he was 2 for 7 on 2-pointers. So unlike last game when he couldn't hit threes, it was 7 for 8 inside the arc. He really struggled inside the arc tonight, and that, like, he has had flashes of success against this group, and I think he's looked at his best as a catch and shoot guy and coming off of weak side pin down actions. I don't think this has been a great matchup for him in terms of trying to create, like, again, we've talked about this before, but if he can get big switched onto him, he can get downhill, he can get into the paint, he could score on those guys. When it's McDaniels and Edwards and Na and Dante, I think those guys have held up fairly well against him. And this has been a tough series for him from that perspective of, like, I think the Lakers have needed a bit more from him on the offensive end, and he hasn't quite been able to deliver. So I think just like LeBron was due for a breakout, I think Austin is due for a breakout. But for the Lakers' sake, I think they need it to be in game 4. Otherwise, I just don't think they've had enough consistent offense up to this point in the series. Otherwise, like, I thought Dorian only had a rebound, but he was a +3 to 29 minutes. Like, he's in there battling against Randall and Gobert and Naz Reid. He hit a couple threes. Gabe hit a three, but I think overall they need more from Rui, DFS, and Gabe, particularly on the offensive end. Jackson, not even. I'll give Jordan Goodwin a shout out. Jordan Goodwin had that jumper. They were targeting Conley early in the fourth quarter, and he rescreened for LeBron and finally got the switch. Or actually, I think it was a hedge, and then he slipped and got a little mid-range jumper. But I thought his defense, his physicality, the rebounding, like Jordan Goodwin made an impact and actually was a team best +9 was the, yeah. No, it also, Vando was +5. Also Vando, I'll give both those guys. I would say it was really LeBron, drop off to Austin, and then I would throw in Vando and Goodwin. And Luka, considering the circumstances, I think like could have been much worse, but defensively, obviously, what was rough. And then stat of the night to me, it's got to be the 13-1 run to close the game. Like the Lakers were right there, and similar to this almost happened in game 2. And this is a trend for me now, is like they're kind of running out of gas at the end of these games. And this is where the Wolves, being deeper, being younger, being more athletic, is catching up to the Lakers. Is like game 2, they barely got to the finish line. Like if that game was 5 minutes longer, and you could always play this game, but like if that game, let's just say it went to overtime somehow, I think they lose that game just because like they could barely like get out transition. They didn't have their legs on their shots, and that was a rough finish in that fourth quarter. Despite actually, I think some good shot quality. This game was a similar thing where they were right there. Some incredible shot making from, they made 17 threes, a lot like high level shot making, but then the Wolves just blitzed them on both sides of the ball. Lakers continued to mess up, and that was the game. I'm going to roll through these just because I kind of touched on all of them, and I want to get into the Q&A because I'm probably going to go a little bit shorter tonight. Takeaway number 1 for me is Luka's sickness saps some of the analysis of this game for me, just because Luka was clearly not himself. I know there's plenty of people piling on him and piling on JJ for playing him. My counter is like, if you take Luka off the floor, and again, for as bad as Luka was defensively, this was, I think, one of his worst defensive performances as a Laker. I thought, but like largely just because he just wasn't himself. Like, I think it was just very clear Luka was not himself. I'm trying to think, like, he's had some bad defensive performances, but this one is up there. I thought the one thing I'll give him credit for is I thought he was very aggressive in like reaching for steals and being physical when targeted. And I thought that was like, got away with a lot of contact. And if you're going to get away with that contact, you might as well do it. But obviously they targeted him with McDaniels a lot. They were trying to get him in situations where he had to close out and they could blow by him. So I thought Minnesota did a really good job with that. But I don't know who else was supposed to play if Luka wasn't going to play. I've seen Dalton thrown around. I think at this point, even with the Lakers' offensive struggles, JJ hasn't gone to Dalton, and maybe he goes to him in game 4. But I think he's just clearly not in a spot where JJ trusts him for real rotation minutes in this series. And I also want to take a step back and look at what like that statement is of playing Dalton Connect over Luka Doncic in a playoff game. Like, again, with all the things, like Luka still had 17, 7, and 8. And I know the numbers aren't everything, but especially the playmaking, like I thought the playmaking was still there. He still had some bad turnovers and I think wasn't as like careful and crafty with the ball. I think there was a little bit of a looseness there, but he still was able to draw. They were being more aggressive with him. And really, I think one of the interesting things with tonight was like the Lakers obviously didn't telegraph any of the stuff with Luka. Nobody knew it. And I think part of that was a competitive thing, because I think if Minnesota knew that, and they seem to have like know it pretty early or find it out pretty early. Like all of a sudden the game plan shifted and it was like, okay, we're going to hedge more. We're going to blitz. We're going to target him more defensively. And Minnesota like had no let up. And I think that's obviously from their side, the right approach. But I think for the Lakers, like they probably didn't want that getting out. So Minnesota wouldn't do that. And obviously it got out anyway. But that was kind of, because I mean, if we, obviously it would have been like an off night for Luka had we not known about the sickness or maybe found out about it afterward. But once we knew that, then it especially early, like then it made much more sense as to like, this is why this dude is just not looking, because like go back to the first two games. Luka had 16 in the first game 1 first quarter, 16 game 2 first quarter. He had 2 points in the first quarter, 1 for 6 shooting, and didn't cross that 16-point mark, which he crossed in the first quarter of both games, the first 2 games. He didn't get to pass 16 until the fourth quarter. So like he was not himself offensively. He has been torching the Timberwolves through the first couple games. They've had no answer for him. They've tried different defenders. They've tried different coverages. He's cooked everything. So Luka not being at the, like, dude was averaging 34, 10, and 5 on basically 50, 40, 90 shooting. To not have that version of him, that was tough for LA. So I think if they had that version tonight with this version of LeBron doesn't take as many shots. He doesn't score as much. I think if Luka is Luka, but I think they win. And that, again, is kind of another thing in terms of potential encouragement. But ultimately, like, it doesn't matter the what ifs. It doesn't matter the moral victories. Like you just gotta find a way to win. And I think Luka tried, but he obviously just didn't have it tonight. Second one will be LeBron, and just I think LeBron's play tonight was the biggest sign of encouragement for the rest of the series in terms of he has not been himself physically. And I talked about it with Claire DeLune on the last episode of Buha's Block. And I think just watching the games, watching it in person, watching it on rewatch, LeBron has not been LeBron. And it offensively, I think defensively, he's been awesome. He has been protecting the rim. He's been protecting the defensive glass. He's been switching on the guys. He's been a leader vocally, calling out switches, quarterbacking the defense. I thought he really set the tone in game 2. And then offensively, I think the playmaking has still been there. And the jumper had started to come back, especially in the mid-range. And he got into a bit of a flow in game 2. But tonight was avalanche from LeBron. Again, the 38 points and just hitting a bunch of big threes, keeping the Lakers in the game. It was one of those trademark LeBron performances, especially on the road. He loves playing on the road. That's one of the reasons why I think Luka and LeBron, if Luka's healthy, like those two guys could have a huge performance in game 4 to steal back home court and go back to LA 2-2. But LeBron, I think this was the best he had looked physically. And I asked him at shoot around how his hip and groin were doing, because he was off the injury report, but from an eye test perspective, he's not looked like LeBron. And he just said, I'm available today, which was his answer going into the series when asked about the state of it. But JJ then shined a bit of a light on it after the game, saying that he felt this is the best LeBron has looked, that he's been progressing each day, and that he needed about 2 weeks to get over his left hip flexor strain. And it's been exactly 2 weeks since the Houston game. So he felt like this is LeBron finally rounding into form from a physical perspective. So if that is the case moving forward and the Lakers can get these Herculean performances from LeBron offensively, that changes the dynamic, because I think based on how Luka played in the first couple games, they needed just like one more guy to hit that level. We've seen both those guys be in that like high 20s to low 30s or above level together. And they're going to need that to win this series, I think. Like based on what we've seen from the supporting cast in terms of just not even getting certain shots and Minnesota running them off the line, like they might just need the big three to combine for 85, 90 points. And they actually got relatively close tonight, but it wasn't quite enough. And ideally, there's another player or two in double figures. But I think LeBron's offensive progress and just the way he looked physically until late in the game, I thought everyone was kind of struggling. But until that point, like I think this was as good as he's looked throughout the whole series. And it wasn't just, he did get hot and the jumper was falling, but I thought he was getting out in transition. He was being more forceful. He was attacking downhill and pick and rolls. Like, it wasn't just unsustainably hot shooting from LeBron. It was like LeBron shooting, because LeBron has become a really good shooter, but also him getting downhill, attacking their bigs off the dribble in a way that he hadn't in the first couple of games. Like, I thought there was a lot to be encouraged by with LeBron. And then final thing, takeaway number 3, if you want the one piece of a pessimism, aside from LA being down 2-1 and having lost 8 of the 12 quarters up to this point, again, I want to highlight Anthony Edwards' playmaking and decision-making. Finished with 29 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 12 of 26 shooting, so not the most efficient night from him in terms of his overall efficiency, but did hit 5 threes, made a bunch of big plays. And I thought, again, it's tough to compare it with Luka not being 100% and not even 100, but like Luka was what, 55, 60%. Like, I don't think you could really put him higher than that in terms of like especially where he was the first couple games. But Ant like took over in crunch time. He was the driving force behind that 13-1 run. I thought he handled the doubles and the blitzes and the shading incredibly. And he made a bunch of big plays. And it felt like this was a bit of a breakthrough moment for him. So if there's one thing I am concerned about, aside from, again, just the general way the series has been trending and Minnesota being up 2-1, I think this felt like a game where something clicked with him in a way that it hadn't in the first couple. And it could be a one-off thing where game 4, he's back to some of the questionable shots and some of the questionable turnovers and passes and whatnot. But if the Wolves rout the Lakers in game 4, I would assume Ant is a really big part of that, if not the primary part. And I feel like it will have stemmed from the progress that he showed tonight in game 3. So that is the one sour note I will leave on before I get into the Q&A here. But I see we got some super chats. First one from Mitch Potter. Have to fix our turnovers. That and a healthy Luka will make a difference. I was there tonight and no one seemed confident either way till 2 minutes left. I wish we got to say what's up, but next time, I might be doing a meetup tomorrow. I still got to figure that out. But thank you for the super chat. I'm with you. I think the turnovers, like, so many of them were so egregious that I feel like it won't. Again, the Lakers have these types of games sometimes, and I don't know how much of it is sustainable. So I think that's one thing that you could look at and say, I don't think that's going to be as bad in game 4. They were much better in game 1 and in game 2 with the turnovers. Trying to fix my hair with this lighting. And yeah, if they don't turn the ball over as much and Luka is back and healthy for game 4, that I think they have a real shot to win it. Sean, thank you for the super chat. Lakers badly need a center and more athleticism. I agree with you. I mean, the center spot has been a need. It was a need before the AD Luka trade. It was a need after the AD Luka trade. And the Jackson situation, like, I still think Jackson can be a useful backup center, but we've seen he doesn't have the trust of JJ. He is a bit matchup, more of a matchup based option, and the Lakers just need another big, to your point, badly. and more athleticism. Like I think if I'm looking at the Lakers roster, and I think it's too early to have that conversation as to what changes need to be made. But based on the way that the first 3 games have gone, and just looking at the roster and I think their general needs, I think they need a better starting center to slot Jackson as a backup. And they need one more athletic big perimeter player. And I think if they get those 2 things, I think they are a much more formidable roster and contender. But without that, I think it just feels like especially, Minnesota, like, it's tough because Minnesota is one of the biggest and most athletic and longest teams in the league, but you also have to factor that in when you are building a roster of this is a team we might run into. Like Houston could make the Lakers look similarly, or they could struggle similarly with Houston's athleticism. So it's like when you are building a roster, you have to factor those things in. And I think the Lakers need one more of those guys, like ideally the 10th man, or even sliding down a couple of the guys in the rotation, and someone in that like DFS Gabe range would just be another big athletic wing type. And then a better starting center to slot Jackson on the bench. Zephyrin, thank you for the super chat. After the initial pain, I try to remember that teams must go through many trials, changes, and failures to be elite. Look at OKC, Cleveland, Boston. Min is no world beater, but we knew this year would not be easy. I think this is a really good perspective. Teams often go through some playoff heartbreak before everything clicks and they win a championship, or sometimes go on a conference finals run. I still, again, I want to go back to my big picture takeaway that like I by no means think this series is over. I think the Lakers just have some things that they really have to consider and some more drastic adjustments to make to save it. But they have been in, I mean, they could have won this game, even with Luka hampered, but assuming Luka was healthy, I think that they would have been in a really good position to win this game. And I mean, they could be up 2-1 right now. They're not, and that's ultimately what matters. But to your point, like depending on, like, if they lose 5 or 4-1, that's maybe a different story depending on how the final couple games go. I think especially losing at home in a game 5 would be a pretty disappointing end to the season. But the Wolves aren't world beaters. The Lakers can still beat them, and I think this team has responded well to challenges throughout the season. They responded well in game 2, and I think they're going to respond well in game 4, but we will see. If they don't, I think their season's probably over. Christian, thank you for the super chat. This loss boosted my confidence. If Luka's healthy, LeBron looking healthier, and AR steps up, we won't lose again. We played worse than Minnesota and still kept it close. Lakers in 6. I like the optimism. I like the confidence. This was sort of the point I was making in my big picture takeaway. I'm a little less confident in Lakers in 6. I'm still sticking with my Lakers in 7 take that I adjusted after game 1. But so I guess in my head, it would probably be Lakers win game 4 and 5, Wolves win game 6, Lakers win game 7. But it's certainly possible they win it in 6. And if the things that you say in terms of Luka getting healthy in the next 40 hours or so, he just needs to rest tomorrow, Lakers aren't going to practice, LeBron continuing to look more like himself, and Austin finally has his breakout game where he puts it together inside the arc and outside the arc, the Lakers can win and should win, but certainly can win. Braden, thank you for the super chat. This next game is going to be extremely anxiety-inducing. Hopefully we come out with the maximum effort. Going back to LA with a win would be so valuable. I agree, and I think the one tricky thing with this, and I was talking to someone about this before the game, was like, Game 3 probably was the one to steal if you were going to steal one. It doesn't mean they can't win Game 4. Obviously, you want to win every game. You want to try to steal every game on the road. So I'm not saying like they can't win Game 4 or they're not going to win Game 4. But the advantage to Game 3 was the break leading into Game 3, whereas Game 4 is about like a 39, 40 hour turnaround from when Game 3 ended, which means that like that tends to favor the younger, more athletic team. Now the Lakers can dig deep and get to like the depths of their soul and come out and lay down the hammer and win Game 4. But in terms of like rest and recovery and like we've seen that sometimes catch up to this group. And Minnesota being at home, being the younger team, being the more athletic team, that could help them more potentially in Game 4. Like the Lakers, it could go one of two ways. The Lakers could come out super spirited in Game 4 and are like gangbusters and they take a big lead. And maybe it's like Game 2 where maybe they get out to a hot start. Minnesota progressively makes a run, but LA holds on. Or they could just come out and not have their legs and Minnesota's running on them and Minnesota Lakers don't have their legs for jumpers, and we'll see. Danica, my Western Conference hopes have decreased. Western Conference Finals hopes have decreased significantly. Sad face. I hear you. Mine are teetering too, in terms of, I think, in my opinion, if they win this series, I think it's probably going to be 7. It's possible it's 6, but this has been a physically taxing and grueling series already. The Wolves have been beating the Lakers up, in part because of just their style of play and their physicality, also in part because the Lakers have played smaller, and that has forced several rotation guys. Like, how many times is it Gabe or Austin trying to battle Randall or Reed or Gobert? And part of it is the Lakers' defensive scheme. Part of it's the personnel. Part of it's the rotation. There's a lot of factors that go into that. But I'm a bit concerned longer term as to if the Lakers survive this series and I guess now come back and win the series, where their legs and energy going to be at in round 2 against either a Houston team that's going to present a lot of the same problems. I don't think they have the same top level scorer and playmaker in the way that Ant is, or he's a top level scorer. He's becoming a better playmaker. They don't have the offensive force that Ant is, but they have a lot of length, a lot of athleticism. They play hard. They're physical. I mean, we've seen their matchups with the Warriors are basically fistfights, or the Warriors, who also play fast. They play small, but they play fast. They're constantly cutting, constantly moving. Like, that's its own version of a taxing matchup for LA. So I think looking at, who knows with OKC, I think they're going to sweep Memphis. That was my pick before the series. They could lose to the Clippers. The Clippers are rolling right now. The Clippers are looking really, really good. They are looking like a real contender. Maybe that's a 7-game series, or the Clippers win it, and then that changes the circumstances for the Lakers in a potential conference finals. But I'm a little bit concerned with how beaten up they might be if they get to the conference finals, or even if they get to next round. But that's something that they're going to have to navigate and figure out. And that's what the playoffs are for, right? Like, you got to play through stuff. You got to play through injuries. You got to play through being tired. You got to play through being beaten up. Everybody's beaten up and tired at this point. So no excuses with it, but I'm also trying to be realistic. Like, I'm always trying to find that balance, but I hear you. I'm not going to like sugarcoat that. Alejandro, thank you for the super chat. Do you think the Lakers just overperformed during a stretch, even pre-Luka, and people jumped the gun calling themselves contenders? No center, weak perimeter D, aging, and a less athletic squad versus top seeds. The one thing I'll say with this, I don't fully agree with this, because if you look at it, the Lakers' record against above 500 teams was the second best. I want to say the second best in the conference, if I'm not mistaken. They had the second best record against the conference behind OKC. second best home record behind OKC. And I think those are things that portend a contender, a true contender. I'm looking now to see the expanded terms of above. Okay, they did not. They had the fourth best record against teams 500 and above in the West, behind OKC, Houston, and Golden State. But still better than Denver, better than the Clippers, better than the Wolves, better than the Grizzlies. So I would say, looking at that mixed with the home record, mixed with the record against the rest of the West, like, remember that they lost a bunch of games against a Charlotte or team, even a Utah, like teams like that, and won a lot of the big. I mean, they beat Boston, they beat the Knicks twice, they beat Denver, they beat the Clippers, they beat the Wolves, they beat the Thunder, they beat the Rockets. Like, they won some big games. So I don't think the hype was overblown or unwarranted. I think there was a lot to be hyped about, and I think there still is a lot to be hyped about. Again, I thought, looking at how much they lost the possession battle tonight and still were in the game late, that is an encouraging thing, in my opinion. Again, you could be encouraged, but you lost the game. So it doesn't matter if you're encouraged. You got to actually deliver in game 4. But I think there were things to be encouraged by. Now, no center is a real thing that has. I think the Jackson stuff was a bit of fool's gold, and his play at a certain level. I think he is a bit matchup based. I think there are matchups where, like maybe a Golden State, where he could hang a little bit more just with his size and athleticism advantage in that series, or maybe a Clippers matchup where I'm now thinking about him versus Zubats, but like teams that play a little bit more drop, that there are ways you can attack that with Luka, or he's just getting a bunch of step backs and pull-ups. But I think the Jackson stuff was a bit of fool's gold. The perimeter defense, even during that stretch, they weren't great at containing the ball. Max had some success with that. Vando has had some success with that, but again, he just doesn't play enough. And for some odd reason, they often put him on like forwards and big wings rather than guards, when I'd like to see him guards. And that would be another thing, more Vando and Ant, but like we just haven't seen that. Outside of those two, like, and Gabe, but he's just too small, I think. The point of attack defense has been an issue, but I think it was an issue even during the good defensive stretch. Aging and less athletic squad, like that's also a bit of an issue. But I wouldn't overreact to that. Like, I never thought they were the best defense in the league. I made that point during that stretch of like they're performing as the best defense in the league, but I think like 5 to 10 is probably a more realistic ceiling for them, and they have not quite been there to start the playoffs, but they started to get back there to close the season. I mean, I don't want to overlook the OKC game, the games, and how they looked in both of those games. And like, even I thought last game against Minnesota, they shut down their water. So I think tonight, it's to be completely honest, it's hard for me to separate the Luka situation with tonight's loss. And I don't want to use that as an excuse, because I think they still had an opportunity to win with that. But if you told me before the game, if we knew, if the report came out before the game, Luka has a stomach bug, he's been throwing up, he didn't sleep well, his status was a bit uncertain internally, but like, he always wanted to play because he's just that guy, I would have immediately been like, yeah, I think the Lakers are probably losing tonight. Like, it's going to be hard to overcome that. But we didn't know that. It was more so like finding out in the middle of the first quarter, LA still hanging around, Luka's having a slow start, and then LeBron was awesome. So that kind of overshadowed that a little bit, but it was clear Luka had several uncharacteristic misses, uncharacteristic turnovers. He was really struggling to contain closeouts and dribble drives. He just didn't really have it tonight. And knowing he didn't talk to the media afterward, just kind of knowing that context, it's hard to separate that. And unfortunately, the playoffs are a war of attrition, and the healthiest team, the luckiest team sometimes advances. That's just how it goes. You get a bad break. Luka gets poisoned, food poisoning, whatever it is. I don't know what it was. Just gets a stomach bug, and you lose. And that's just sometimes how the playoffs go. But now, obviously, the margin for error is gone, and they have to come out and win game 4. Kapunaheli, I hope I said that right. They can't make stops. Might as well give DK a chance and give less minutes to Rui. AR is frustrating to watch. Those turnovers hurt us. Some tough turnovers from Austin, and that's why the tricky part is, especially with Luka Luka has had the ball so much in his hands and been running things so smoothly, I think, through the first couple games, that guys haven't been in, I think, the right rhythm, but also like the alternative going from Luka to even LeBron or Austin with how those guys have handled some of the ball pressure and decision-making points in this series. I think it's such a big drop-off that LA really felt that offensively. And it's just like, this has been a tough matchup for Austin. They are long, physical, athletic. Those are the types of guys that give him problems, and Minnesota has multiple of them. So he's almost exceeding my expectations kind of in a weird way, because I acknowledge that like a lot of these guys are the exact type of defenders you'd want to slow down Austin, and they happen to have multiple of them. But it's also going to be a learning thing for him in terms of getting to the next level of being able to withstand this type of defensive ball pressure and physicality. I thought they were very physical with Austin tonight. Even Mike Conley had a couple physical possessions against him. Like, they've been trying to just bump him and make him uncomfortable and just hit him a lot. And I think it's had a cumulative effect. So he's got to work on that. That's more of an off-season thing. Can't really change that in the middle of a series. But like, Austin has to be better. The thing with Dalton, I'm just trying to think of the Lakers defensive scheme and like where Dalton would fit in, because I'm struggling to see it. I also think one thing that's flown under the radar with Dalton, especially in some of the more recent games down the stretch, where he was in that, like, remember Dalton's the 10th man. Like, let's be clear about that. JJ views him as the 10th man, but he'll have the one shift sometime, or, to close the regular season, he would have the one shift to start the second quarter, and he played 5 minutes. It would be 4 to 5 minutes, and then he gets pulled. That's it. And if you go back and look at a lot of those games, he took 0 shots, 1 shot, or 2 shots. And from I think this is kind of a structural thing with the Lakers, that they almost use Dalton more as just a spacer and like the threat of him more than actually using him in application. And we've seen it in games where they're shorthanded, but I almost think they misuse Dalton offensively to the point of like, I don't even think they're getting all the benefits of having him out there. So could he shake loose and hit a few shots and catch fire and like swing a half of a quarter? It's possible, but I would have liked to have seen that during the stretch run, which we just didn't see. And it was actually just a lot of teams know he's a good shooter, so that is going to suck a defender out of the fray, and it's going to be more 4-on-4 basketball. But Dalton wasn't really getting the high volume of looks you'd want for him when he's out there, and they're not really running stuff with him on the ball. So if he's just a movement shooter or catch and shoot guy, I think Minnesota could scheme and would scheme for that, limit him. I don't think they're all of a sudden going to start running stuff for him on the ball. Like, I think that's a big change to ask a game 4. I'm not saying it won't happen. Like, maybe they give him maybe they bench Jackson and give Dalton a look as the 9th man. I think you're not you. I think this is more of a anyone who's suggesting Dalton, you are underestimating how badly the defense and the rebounding could be. And Minnesota will target him the way they've targeted Luka, the way they've targeted Austin, the way they've even targeted Rui sometimes off of drives or certain actions. They will target Dalton. And I think they will do it relentlessly. So that is my concern with putting Dalton in there. This is not the regular season. This is the playoffs. And if you have a weakness, that will be picked at. And he has a very glaring weakness in his defense, both on and off the ball. Joseph, thank you for the super chat. I really thought that Jordan was small, light in his time on the court. But yeah, winnable game, but turnovers and the 1 out of 2 free throws also killed us. Yeah, small, light. I'm telling you, my contacts are killing me right now. The turnovers and the free throws, I took notes throughout the whole game, and those were two things I kept looking at felt like every time they turned the ball over, Minnesota got out in transition, got their offense going, got them into a certain rhythm. And then the missed free throws are something that's controllable. LA just had a really good free throw shooting game. I think they were perfect in game 2, if I'm not mistaken, and I think like 20 for 20. And to have that and then have this performance, it just, they left so many points on the board that I think that did catch up to them eventually in the fourth quarter. But yeah, good win was awesome. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. We all saw OKC against Grizz by 51 points. SGA only having 15 points first game. Like the Lakers need to win against the Wolves by 20 plus points without Luka, or Luka not playing well. If this is what LA can do best, round 2 is the best this playoff. I understand where you're coming from. The pushback I would have here is that they don't have the top end firepower, right? Like LeBron is, if we're slotting Luka as the number 1 guy and Shea as the number 1 guy respectively, LeBron is better than J-Dub. LeBron is better than Chet. So from like a top end firepower perspective, it like that's actually in the Lakers' advantage. That's one of the advantages they have over OKC. But OKC is just deeper than the Lakers. Like I know much was made, by myself included, of the two OKC matchups. But if we are comparing the rosters, OKC has a better overall roster, a deeper roster, and I think they are better suited. Like that, this to me was part of the argument against Shea with the MVP, is like they can have Shea. Like the Nuggets cannot win it, and not to make it a Shea Jokic thing, but like the Nuggets cannot have Jokic score 15 points and win a playoff game. I would be very shocked at that. Like it would have to be Jamal Murray and MPJ combining for 70 points and like just shooting the leather off the ball. The OKC can't do that. I don't think the Lakers can do that. And like that, it's just, it is a certain luxury that like maybe SGA with 15, maybe Tatum with 15, and maybe like Mitchell with 15. Like those are maybe the 3 teams where their best player or best offensive player could drop 15 and they still be okay. And that's why I think those are the 3 best teams in the league. But I wouldn't equate it necessarily to like the Thunder having SGA score 15 and winning by 50 to the Lakers having Luka score 17 and still lose or not win by 20 plus. Like I don't think it's the same. OKC starts 2 centers. Like that's a matchup game. They have way more positional versatility than the Lakers in terms of they could go double big, they could go single big, they could go no big. Lakers right now can only go no big. So I think there's some differences there. Doesn't mean Lakers can't beat OKC, but I'm just saying in terms of like, I think that they have more margin for error and more pathways to blowouts as we saw in the regular season. But to your point, like if the Lakers are going to play like this and be this inconsistent, maybe round 1 or round 2 is their ceiling as currently constructed. And then they have to have some tough conversations this summer. But I would not, personally, I would not look at what OKC did and compare that to what the Lakers did, because I think it's 2 different situations. I would also contend that Memphis is way worse than Minnesota. Like Memphis was the golden ticket in the first round. They are a crumbling team right now. Minnesota is they had a better net rating than the Lakers, better point differential than the Lakers, won one fewer game than the Lakers. Like it's a much more even matchup than OKC Memphis. Samir Dude, thank you for the super chat. It is clear that we need to address roster construction and build properly around Luka so he resigns. Gut feeling, do we win this series still? Yeah, I'm picking Lakers in 7. I haven't swayed off that. I'm less confident in that pick. Like obviously, I think any statistical model is now going to favor the Wolves. I'm sure they're going to be the betting favorite as well. Like the team that's up 2-1, especially if you're the road team, tends to win the series. So I think if I'm being like logical and purely objective of the results up to this point, you got to favor Minnesota. But I think there's some necessary context here of LA had one of Luka's worst games as a Laker and still was in this game until the final 4 minutes. And is like barely getting to like 6 playable guys and was still in this game. Now that can catch up to them at the end of this series. That could catch up to them in future series. So if we're talking like long-term run, I am a bit more pessimistic, but I'm still picking Lakers in 7. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Do you think JJ should consider subbing out Luka and AR for defensive purposes? JJ had a couple timeouts remaining when Gabe was tied with 3 to 4 minutes left. So the point I made earlier, I understand this. I just think the Lakers offense is already at a certain level. I think if you take away 1 or 2, you could sub out 1 or you could sub out both. You're taking away 1 or 2 of the guys that are, depending on which one it is, like one of their 3 best offensive players, 3 best ball handlers, 3 best playmakers. The gap between Luka or Austin and Gabe or Jordan Goodwin, or if we're going down to like Vando, like there's a Grand Canyon size gap between those 2 in particular, especially if it's Luka. Less of a gap, obviously, with Austin, but like still a pretty big gap to whoever else you want to throw in there. If it's Gabe, if it's Jordan, if it's Vando. So can you play? Could he have played with it a little bit more with some of the timeouts, some of the matchup stuff? Yes, but I think up to this point, the Lakers' biggest issue in this series has been their offense. They have scored 95 points, 94 points, and 104 points. They are not going to win this series if they score 104 points or less. The rest, like if that's their series high, they're not going to win this series. I'm just saying that now. Minnesota has now had 2 games above that. They had 1 stinker, game 2, but they had a 117 and a 116. So LA is going to have to hit 110, 115 plus at least once or twice in this series. And up to this point, they have not been able to do that. But still, the scoring has been concentrated with the big 3. They've not been efficient, both in terms of Luka has been until tonight. But the other 2 had not been efficient. LeBron was efficient tonight. So really, like Austin's been the primary guy that's been inefficient. And then turnovers have obviously been an issue for all 3 at various points. But I just think that I understand what, like, I think what could happen in that case is that maybe they get an extra stop or 2, but also the spacing, the way the offense is functioning, I think that the offensive drop-off could be even greater than the defensive drop-off. And I know like the 4th quarter, especially down the stretch, the defense was a problem. I'm not saying it wasn't. But like even let's take a step back for a second. 103, 37 left. They get outscored 13-1. You should not be, or look at the camera when I say this, you should not be scoring 1 point over the final 4 minutes and 37 seconds of any serious playoff game. If it's a blowout, in either direction and you're emptying the bench, sure, garbage time, whatever. But we're talking about until the final 30 seconds when they empty the bench, a serious pseudo must, I mean, every game's a must win, but like basically a must win in a game 3. And you go, again, if we take away the final 30 seconds, you go 4 minutes and you score 1 point. Like that's, again, the 13 points, not great. They were on pace to score 52 in the quarter. So that's bad defense. But you're on pace to score 4 points in the quarter. That's even worse offense than bad defense. So I still think their offense has been the biggest issue up to this point. It's really been the biggest issue. Even go back, like we're talking about the defense and stuff, like their offense has just never fully clicked. And I maybe they need an off season. Maybe they need, I think they are due for a big offensive night. So maybe that comes in game 4. Maybe they blow out Minnesota in game 4. We're having a totally different conversation here after that. But the offense hasn't clicked. And I think that's still the biggest issue. And I think if I'm subbing guys out, I'm keeping Luka, LeBron, and Austin. And I'm looking at the other 2 spots, Dorian and Rui. I mean, it's tough now. You're downsizing. So I mean, it can't really play much smaller, but I don't know. I think that's the spot I would look and really probably start with Rui and maybe you go Vando over Rui. But outside of that, like a compromised Luka, I kind of get it, but still he was able to generate and do some good things down the stretch. Wasn't himself, but there's still a baseline level of like ball handling and playmaking that you just don't get with anybody else. Like it would be ideal that the Lakers had like Minnesota, obviously you'd rather have Luka, Austin, and Gabe as your 3 in the backcourt, but like Minnesota, one of the benefits to their roster construction is like they have a certain level of interchangeability with those guys where you can go with a Mike Conley because of the shooting and the playmaking and just being that savvy vet, or you could go with the Dante who kind of has that explosive, chaotic element to him. He hits some couple crazy moonball shots and plays with a certain level of toughness, and he's stocky and whatever. And then you also have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's an all defense level perimeter defender and also a 40% 3-point shooter. So like depending on the matchup, they can kind of shapeshift and go bigger, go smaller. The Lakers don't really have that. Like they kind of need their best offensive players out there and then building lineups around that. So that's where I know people like, again, I get when people are struggling that people want them benched, but if you look at the Lakers alternatives, if you want to tell me with a straight face, you'd rather play Gabe Vincent than Luka or Austin, I just can't get behind that. If you want to tell me with a straight face, you want to play Dalton over Luka or Austin, I can't get behind that. I think we have enough of a sample size to trust those guys to make enough plays offensively. Like I can't entertain that. Instancism, Braun shot falling. I'm not worried. Lakers in 6. There you go. Again, biggest source of optimism is LeBron and the way that he looked tonight. Rich, do you think they'll bench JH? I agree with you. Well, to bring up an earlier point I made, when JJ says that he still believes in someone, that's typically a bad side. That's typically that's JJ's kiss of death. So I think the way that this is trending, this is not sourced, so please don't aggregate me. My read is yes. I believe as of right now, I don't think Jackson will be starting in game 4. Jackson? Hope this is not Jackson Hayes. Thank you for super chat. I think Rockets beat us given how we look on defense. I will say one positive for the Lakers in a potential Rockets series is like they're not as good as Minnesota offensively. They are a much more reliant team on transition, and they don't have a guy who breaks your defense the way that Ant can. So I think it's a better if I didn't rank Houston because they weren't a potential first round matchup, but had I ranked them, I would have had them ahead of Minnesota, meaning an easier matchup than Minnesota. I still stand by that. I think now, could the cumulative effect of LA's like the physicality and beating that they've endured in this series hurt them against Houston and cost them in that series? That's certainly possible. I'm not like, but as like a potential first round opponent, had they played, I think LA right now would be up 2-1. 3-0 is a little, especially with the Luka situation. Like maybe this was like they were up 2-0 in LA and then they lost this game because Luka's sick. But I think LA would have been in a better spot against Houston. David, thank you for the super chat. Luka, Braun, AR need to score 80 plus points and bench 30 plus to win. This team was never complete. JJ is great, but not sure what more he can do with this roster. I agree with that last part. I look, I'm not saying JJ has been perfect. I don't know what he's doing with some of those. I really don't like the lineup of LeBron, Austin, Vando, DFS, and Gabe or Goodwin. I just don't think that lineup makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. But I don't know. It might have actually done better tonight, funny enough. But I don't like. I think some of the bench stuff has been a little. There's always rotation stuff. I feel like with every coach that there's a rotation stuff that you don't agree with. That like I don't know a coach that has the perfect rotation. But to your point, like that's basically what I'm saying. Like the Lakers need 80 plus from those guys, and then ideally 25, 30 off the bench, and not even necessarily off the bench because you just need another 30 from somewhere. Because Rui could get you 15. If Dorian's starting, he could get you 10, 12, and then Gabe can get you 6, 8, 10, and you cobble that together, and Goodwin gets you 4, Vando gets you 2 or 4. Like all of a sudden you are at around 115. Easier said than done for this group, clearly, against Minnesota. Like they just have not been, like they haven't been able to crack the code. I made this point after game 2, but now they've had 10 games this season where they've been held under 100 points. 4 of them were against Minnesota. And outside of LeBron's hot shooting in the fourth quarter, they could have found themselves in an 11th time and a 5th time against Minnesota tonight. So they've really struggled with his defense. And I'm not absolving JJ of his, I think there's some things that could be better. And I think offensively, the organization and like some of that stuff can certainly be better. But I also think his hands are tied a little bit with the current options. Rich, 1 to 10, where you at? I'm still a 7-8. This is like confidence in the Lakers winning. I'm at like a 5.2, to be honest. Like I'm picking them at 7. I'm not feeling great about it. I'm like, I said at the top, the Wolves have been the best team in the series so far. Like that's not debatable. They've won 8 of the 12 quarters. I think it's been close, but the Wolves keep finding, like, when it comes down to it, the Wolves, especially now looking at the fourth, I think the Wolves have outplayed the Lakers in all 3 fourth quarters, and that's kind of something I'm a little bit skittish about, is that at the end of every game, the Wolves have looked like the team with more energy and vibrance and verve and all those types of words. Like they just have had it more. And part of that's because they're younger and more athletic, but that would be a little bit of a concern, is like, I would like to see the Lakers look better in fourth quarters. I see Mitch says I'm still at a 7.5. Oh, this is a panic? I might have misunderstood the question. Adam, says, Jovan, I'm about to crash out. Really hope the team can recover, especially Luka, before like noon on Sunday. Game 4 is harder to win away than game 3. Braun has done it 6 times, though, being down 2-1. I mean, I would say if you were picking any 2 stars to have to win a game 4 on the road, it's harder to find 2 guys you'd want more than LeBron and Luka. Like, you throw Jokic in the conversation because he's the best player in the world. You throw Giannis in the conversation because of his playoff pedigree. You throw Steph in the conversation because of his playoff pedigree and just how great he is. But I think, like, honestly, just based on playoff risers who play well in big games on the road, LeBron and Luka are up there and are arguably the top 2. Like, current guys. So if there are 2 guys that can get the Lakers out of this, I think they have them, assuming Luka's not puking his guts out. If he's puking his guts out, it's a different conversation. If we're talking panic, I'd say I'm at a 7. Well, so I think I originally said 7 after game 1, actually, now that I think about it. So I moved up to an 8. And I think I said 3 out of 5. I bump it to a 4 out of 5. But it's still, it's weird because I'm battling a couple things where, like, I think there are real reasons why the Lakers are down 2-1 and could easily be up 2-1. But there's also just the facts of, like, based on how this series has gone with Minnesota winning game 1 and then winning game 3, like, and winning, again, I've said 8 out of 12 quarters and winning the margin the way that they have, that they're plus 25 in the series, like, all signs point toward Minnesota winning this series. I'm like, objectively, that is factual. But we have the context of how the Lakers have looked, some of the things that have been trending in their direction, Luka not being healthy, LeBron looking at his best. You combine a healthy Luka with LeBron looking at his best, I think the Lakers win game 4. They win game 4. They go back to LA for game 5. The momentum has shifted back to their side of the ledger. They are one of the best home teams in the league. That's the path forward, but they have to win game 4, and they have a very short turnaround. Nico Harrison's burner says Jovan's contacts just don't have that verve tonight. Man, I don't know what's been going on because I don't get allergies or whatnot, but it feels like my eyes have been drier than normal, and I just changed my contacts, so it's not even like I change them every 2 weeks, but it's not even that as an excuse. Adam says, call me crazy. Whoever wins game 4 wins the series. I would tentatively agree. I would say if the Lakers like barely win game 4 and there's still a lot of the same concerns we've had through the first 3 games, I still might feel a little shaky with it in terms of them winning it, despite, because Minnesota had a shot there in the 4th. It never got that close. I'm talking about game 2. But I like tentatively agree with you. If Minnesota goes up 3-1, I think they're winning the series in 5 or 6. Lakers tie it. Now it's best of 3-2 in LA. Like, really, that should determine the series. Dion, we don't know what Luka had. Unfortunately, he didn't speak with us, and we weren't given any clarity. We just, the only thing we know is he's felt it for 24 hours. He was puking last night, didn't sleep much, was puking all day today. They kept it under wraps. He decided to play, but then it sounds like he was puking again at halftime and didn't. They weren't sure if he was going to come back for the second half. BC says Wolves in 6 seems like the most likely outcome currently. I would agree with that. Victor says, how do you feel about starting DFS over Rui? I would start DFS over Jackson. And I think Jackson needs to be retired for this series. I think he is not playing well. I think the Wolves have neutralized him on offense. I think they're now targeting him a bit on defense. They got killed in his minutes tonight. He was a minus 13 in 9 minutes. He didn't have the worst plus minus among the starters because Rui was actually minus 19. This is, I think, the second game Rui's had the worst, or entering this game, he had the worst plus minus overall, minus 24. Now he's at minus 43. They're being killed in the Rui minutes. So to your point, like the problem is they don't have alternatives. Like Vando can't like not foul. And like, I thought he was really good defensively, but he had 5 fouls in 13 minutes. And like, that's been a trend for him. When he doesn't have an advantage, he tends to hack. So it's like you could start Vando over Rui, but then I don't know if Vando could play 20 minutes without getting into serious foul trouble. So yeah, I don't know. They're kind of in a tough spot with that. Mitch Potter says we still have 3 out of the 5 best players in this series. Yes. The issue is, remember, going back to the series preview, this feels so weird holding this thing for this whole time. My arm's dead. A big thing that I talked about was like, who's going to be the 4th best player in the series? And it's been Julius Randle. I would say that I think Luka, I don't want to hold tonight too much against him. If we hold tonight against him, then I think Ant's probably been the best player in the series. I think Luka was, in my opinion, clearly the best player in the series through the first 2 games. He was sick tonight, so I factor that in a little bit. But even with that, Ant had his own struggles at various points over the first couple of games. So I give Luka, I would say Luka's been the best player. Ant's been the second best player. LeBron versus Randall's close. I think tonight's game was better than any game Randall's had, but I think Randall was in the aggregate better through the first couple games. It was probably close. I'll give it to LeBron because I think he's better defensively. So I would say LeBron 3, Randall 4. And then I think Jaden McDaniels has been the 5th best player in this series. So while on paper, we can say the Lakers have 3 of the best 5, I think through the first 3 games, Jaden McDaniels has been the 5th best player in the series. Then I would say Austin 6. So we got a super chat from Keon. Oh wait, I missed a couple. Rich, thank you for the super chat. I may be delusional, but I feel we are beating ourselves. You're not delusional. You're 100% correct. I mean, 19 turnovers, far too many. I mean, the one where like Austin, a little bit of a hot potato pass, and clearly Vando wasn't ready, but like Vando has to catch that. Then that guys slipping, guys dribbling off their feet, just some bad turnovers, and then missing free throws. Just a lack of focus tonight overall, I think. Gary, Lakers are playing too much iso ball late in games. I would even contend at various points in games, in the first quarter of games, but certainly in the fourth quarters, I think that is what has, and that's why, like, I actually think the more I've thought about it, I'm less into the mismatch hunting with Gobert. Like, there's different data on it. The raw data of just like the pure field goals looks good, but when you actually factor in like how many possessions it's been, how many picks it's been, because sometimes it's multiple picks on a possession in terms of like targeting Gobert. The Lakers actually have not been that efficient at that. And it's not, I think we see the highlights outside of, I guess, Luka, like, but even then I think it's been a little bit too much, but I think the Lakers need to, like, right now, it feels like that's kind of a win for the Wolves in terms of the Lakers ISO. They dance with the guy. and then they take a contested step back or pull up jumper. And they're just way too jump shot heavy. And I said that earlier in the show, like they got to get to the rim more. They got to get into the paint more. They did it more in game 2, but tonight they got crushed in the paint battle. Wonder what it was overall. It was 56-26. That is decisive. That is bad. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat as I make a hole in the wall accidentally. Keon Park, we've all seen AR play big in the playoffs, but back then AR wasn't seen as top 3. Now people see AR as top 3 and Braun being injured. People want AR to be him. Again, do you think AR will be nervous out there more than he thinks? This is tough because it's always tough, like putting yourself in the psyche of guys, right? I think we can try to play armchair psychologist, and sometimes it's obvious. Like I will say, I thought Austin was nervous in game 1, especially early. I think some of the short arming, some of the floaters and 2-pointers that he had going downhill, like I thought there was some element of nerves and just him not looking like himself. I think there has been a little bit of him being sped up a bit by the Wolves at times with some of the catch and shoot opportunities or just sensing their length. Like he had the layup tonight that he blew or the runner, however you want to label it, that I think he saw Randall rotating and he just kind of rushed that up. And that's one that Austin usually makes. The pushback I would have slightly is I would argue that you could have made the case for him as the number 3 last year. I know Austin versus D'Lo, it was a big debate. I would say that just talking to people around the Lakers and talking to people around the league, most people considered Austin the 3rd best player and more of a winning player and more of a trustworthy player. And I think that bore out in the Denver series. So were there less or lower expectations last year? For sure. I'm not saying that he had the same expectations or even close to the same expectations. I think the expectations have risen and he has not lived up to them so far. Like that's undeniable. But at the same time, I think part of it is a physical thing where not everyone is Luka who could like somehow be at a major physical disadvantage and still find ways to dominate. Like on paper, Jaden McDaniels should be able to bother Luka with his length and his athleticism and just his overall size. And he's a tenacious, menacing defender. And healthy Luka just looks at him like he's a fly. And I think with Austin, like this is the next. Because even go back to like the middle of the season, remember there were some stretches there where it's like against Detroit and some of the more physical athletic teams. Houston was around that time early in the year. Dallas actually, targeting him defensively. Like he's had times where he struggled with more physical athletic perimeter groups. And Minnesota is as testy in that sense as it gets. Like Minnesota and Houston are probably the 2. Boston's up there too, but like he's actually done well against Boston. But I feel like I don't want to make an excuse for Austin because I think he can be better. I think he should be better. If you're asking me honestly, I think this is probably the worst matchup in the league for him is this Minnesota group. And I think even with that, his numbers are not as, I feel like everyone's acting like he's averaging like 8 points a game and 4 assists a game on like 30% shooting. Like that's not, Austin's still been close to his season averages. The efficiency has dropped a bit. I would argue he hasn't made the impact and the playmaking hasn't been there. But I want like Austin's numbers are not as bad as I feel like people are talking about. But I also think this is just a really bad matchup for him. Again, I think between this or Houston, maybe even Houston, he could pick on Fred VanVleet a bit. And Şengün is not a rim protector, whereas they have Gobert. I think this is the worst matchup in the league for him, to be completely honest. And I think that has been a big factor in the first 3 games. But I think he's still due. We've seen tonight it was the 3s, last game was the 2s. I think he should have a better performance in game 4 or 5. It's just if it's game 5, it might be a little bit too late. Adam, Jovan, how are the locker room vibes? Obviously, Luka did not wear his confidence per usual because of illness, but they bring that everybody act tough when they up energy. We know Luka plus company has. They cleared out a lot of the locker room before we were in there. I know that, like, LeBron was calm when we spoke with him. DFS he's been in wars. Austin projected confidence. JJ was a little pissed, but when is JJ not pissed after a loss? So I mean, at least among the guys we spoke with, everybody projected confidence going into game 4. One thing I didn't touch on, and this is a side thing, but there was a fan or fans who were whistling during the game. And there was one big play in the 4th quarter where there's a kick ball, so it should have been whistled. I don't know why it wasn't whistled. And as the ball, I forget when exactly this fake whistle happens. I forget if it's McDaniels gets it or as the ball's loose or McDaniels picks it up. Someone does a fake whistle. Luka stops. And I forget, there was another Laker out there. They both stop. And Jaden McDaniels just goes and dunks the ball. And the Lakers are like, what the hell is going on? You just whistled that it was a kicked ball. And then the rest like, no, we didn't. And then eventually, it might have been maybe, because I think it was 97-90. But then coming out of a timeout, then they told the crowd to stop whistling. And because spoke with Jordan Goodwin after the game, and he said there was like multiple times where they thought they stopped because they thought they heard a whistle and it was just someone in the crowd. And that was another weird element to this game, was like that might have cost the Lakers at least a couple of transition. Because I also think there was one where Ant got a dunk off of that, and they stopped and they thought there was a whistle. So that was a weird thing. And look, that's a credit to Minnesota's crowd. Like, if you could do that and throw the Lakers off, like, it's gamesmanship. But go back to the 80s when the Celtics would have the hot water that would burn the Lakers in the showers, and the Kings trying to food poisoning with Kobe and the cowbells in Phil Jackson's ear so they couldn't call plays or talk in huddles. Like, that's just part of the playoffs and part of what comes with it. But that was another little wrinkle to this game, was that there's multiple possessions the Lakers stopped because they heard a whistle. Now, look, the flip side is Minnesota didn't stop. So I don't know if that's a thing every game in Minnesota or what, but Lakers also got to play through that next game. Is like, there might be some possessions where there is a real whistle, but you got to play through it because Minnesota did, and they got some easy buckets off that. Tali Khalifa, what up? Is it just me, or is Minnesota's crowd much better than crypto? I will say they pump in a lot of noise there. So I think that's another thing that you're hearing on TV. I don't know. Game 2 was pretty loud with LA getting out to the start that they did in the 4th quarter with some of the big plays. So I would say it was comparable to game 2. Maybe some of the peaks were a little bit higher, but they also are pumping in a lot of crowd noise and sound that it's kind of hard. Like, I would say overall it was a louder environment, but it's hard to separate how much of that was the arena versus how much was or how much of it was the speakers versus how much was the actual arena. Gary, thank you for the super chat. AR needs to attack closeouts more, get into the paint and find shooters instead of trying to finish over Wolves' length. I agree. And there's the one play, I want to say it was Luka called up DFS to screen for him. Then he kicks the ball to Austin. Then DFS cuts through. He kicks the ball to Austin, who then Luka kicks the ball to Austin, gets downhill, and that's when he hits Vando for the dunk. And that was in the second quarter. I think more plays like that. Like, get Austin downhill, leverage the playmaking. Also, I think the Lakers, like, the one thing I'll throw Austin in here, and I think it's multiple players, but like we're talking about Austin, like I think they just have to stop being afraid of the length and the rim protection, and just like go in there and get blocked, go in there and get a charge. Just like try to get something at the rim, and if they penetrate 5 times and they pick up a charge and they get blocked 3 times and they miss once, okay, then take a step back and reevaluate. But I feel like they're letting Minnesota win that battle preemptively and almost playing a little scared. And they need to attack the rim and put pressure on Gobert, and especially when Gobert's out. Like that, because that's the thing. So another kind of wrinkle to this game was they closed with Naz Reid. I think that's their best lineup. Naz Reid, Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, Ant, Dante. I think that's probably going to be their best lineup moving forward against the Lakers. But with no Rudy in there, for as bad as Rudy's been offensively and as bad as he's been on the glass, he's still a really good rim protector. He has impacted the Lakers around the rim, and also just in terms of them driving and being afraid, or that's my interpretation. I think they need to, especially when Rudy's out, attack, get downhill, because Naz Reid and Julius Randle are not rim protectors. Jaden McDaniels is the closest thing they have to a rim protector, but if he's out on Luka, he's not going to be near the rim. So that's like the Wolves are talking about the Lakers not having rim protectors and shot blockers. I think when Rudy's out, they can flip it and say the same thing. The Great One says top 10 players so far in the series: 1, Ant-Man; 2, Luka; 3, LeBron; 4, Randall; 5, Jaden; 6, Nas; 7, Gobert; 8, Nah; 9, Dante; 10, Conley. I noticed though Austin, and I'm just gonna pull up Austin's numbers because, again, I think he's being a little okay. Austin, 40 minutes a game, 17 points a game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. 17 points, too low. 5 rebounds, solid. 4 assists, too low. 42% shooting, subpar. 32% shooting on threes, subpar. 86% on free throws, good. 2 turnovers a game. Compare that to 4.7 for Luka, 2.3 for LeBron as well. So it's actually more so than Luka at over double the turnovers than Austin and LeBron. More turnovers than Austin and LeBron combined up to this point. 0 steals for Austin, 0.3 blocks, minus 33. Second worst plus minus on the team. So 17, 5, and 4. Like, I'll say, looking at this again, he's been better than Conley. He's been better than Dante. He's been better than Nah. I think he's been better than Gobert. Nas, I think he's been the 6th best player, personally. Black Trevor Lane, thank you for the super chat, even though there's no question. I'm catching up here. RGN Cal 4, quick quick turnaround. Braun looked healthy. That's a plus. Exactly. That's the biggest thing. I am going to wrap here because we've gone an hour 45. I have some more work to do tonight, and it is 3:30 in the morning where I'm at here in Minnesota. But I appreciate you all for rocking with me super late. I guess it's 1:30 a.m. Pacific time. I think, as I said, with my big picture takeaway, the series is far from over. I think there are some things to be encouraged by if Luka can get healthy, if LeBron can continue to look like LeBron, if the Lakers move Jackson to the bench, if they stop selling out versus Ant as hard as they did in game 3 and play back to more of a conservative scheme and have to play with the requisite level of energy and attacking closeouts, box outs, play smart, don't turn the ball over 19 times. They do those things, they give themselves a real shot to win game 4, in my opinion. Again, as I said, LeBron and Luka, there are many stars, if any, that I would take over those two for a must-win game 4 on the road. But we'll see. It is a quick turnaround, under 40 hours from the end of game 3 to the beginning of game 4. Shortest turnaround in the series, actually. So that's going to be something that is difficult for the Lakers to overcome, especially with Luka dealing with the sickness. So we'll see. But that'll do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate you all. I will be recording a Lakers beat writer roundtable tomorrow with the rest of the beat writers. ESPN's Dave McMenamin, LA Times' Dan Wojcicki, Southern California News Group's Kobe Price. Not quite sure how we're going to do the mic or the camera setup yet because there's 4 of us. We're trying to figure that out. I think we're going to do it in person. Might be drinking a little bit, having some fun. But if you want us to answer a question, we are trying to keep it not as much about the series, more just about our jobs, our lives, the beat. So, you know, we're recording it before game 4, but it'll be coming out after game 4. So any series specific questions might not even be relevant. But if you have a question for us, I posted in the community tab on YouTube a thread. So reply to that thread and we will be answering questions directly from there. But that'll do it. Thank you all so much. And I will talk to you very soon.